Good morning and welcome to this webinar, the last of the Digital Construction Summit 2024, brought to you by Construction Management and BIM Plus, in association with the Chartered Institute of Building, Advero, Ideagen Mail Manager and Trimble. This session is entitled Prevent and Defend Information Management's Role in Disputes, in association with Ideagen Mail Manager. Our programme today: information management best practice can help prevent disputes arising or defend them when they arise. Sarah Kite of HKA Global and IM4Legal member will discuss the importance of record keeping and will reveal common information management errors and their impact on disputes. In the second half of the webinar, Ideagen Mail Manager will focus on an often neglected part of information management: email management. Email is by far the most common project correspondence tool, but poor email management can contribute to disputes. There will be a Q&A session at the end. Let me introduce our speakers. As I've already mentioned, Sarah Kite, Technical Director of HKA Global and a member of IM4Legal, the NEMA InTest group focused on the interface between information management and the law. And George Emeny, Senior Client Manager at Ideagen Mail Manager. I'm Justin Stanton, Editor of BIM Plus. I'm your chair this morning. As ever, we have some housekeeping to get through. So please use the Q&A function, not the chat function. Please use the Q&A function to ask questions. You can pose those questions as yourself or anonymously. Our panelists will address the questions during the Q&A session at the end. This webinar is being recorded and will be available to watch on demand via the original registration page later today. There is 1 hour's CPD credit for those who complete this webinar live. CPD certificates will be issued later today. You can only qualify for a CPD credit if you are watching via your own registration link. That's enough of that. Let's crack on and let's hand over to Sarah. Over to you.
Thanks, Justin. Okay. So just to check, Justin, we can see my screen?
Yep, perfect. Yep, off you go.
Perfect, thanks. Right, so I'm Sarah Kite. I'm a Technical Director at HKA, which is a leading global consultancy in risk mitigation and commercial dispute resolution, providing expert claims and advisory services. As a technical director, I'm also a testifying expert witness in matters related to information management, CAD and BIM, but the majority of my work is just assisting delay, design and quantum experts with digital issues. So I've acted and assisted in over 100 disputes in the UK, EU, United Arab Emirates, Oceania, and the Americas. And in addition to that, I'm a member of IM4Legal, as Justin mentioned, and NEMA and Women in BIM. And if you enjoy the content, please come see me speak or watch online at AU this year, which will be 15th to 17th of October. So, construction disputes and construction technology. Construction disputes carry significant risk for everyone in the supply chain. And obviously, this is very topical this week. This includes owners, operators, contractors, suppliers, consultants, lenders, insurers, even sometimes lawyers. And claims and disputes are sometimes unavoidable. No matter how hard you try, how well you performed, sometimes your client simply stops paying you or goes into administration and leaves you with no choice but to claim. So sometimes it's just simply unavoidable. And claims and disputes are common, but the cost of pursuing claims can put immense financial strain on a business. And this process is even more difficult when a business is in financial distress and when their records are poor or difficult to use or just badly organized. So if your records are unclear or onerous to work with, it's going to take longer and it's going to cost more typically to resolve them. But digital evidence can be used as a shield and a sword. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So whilst a lot of construction technology focuses on preventing disputes, it can also be really helpful in resolving them as well. So this is a question I get a lot. If BIM and construction technology is so good, why are you talking about it in a dispute resolution setting? Why do you even exist? And it's because I can, if I'm in a claim setting or a dispute setting, it's because this digital evidence can be useful, factual, contemporaneous evidence that's needed to help resolve a dispute. So if you're using BIM on a project and information management is at the core of your business, then you might be using it to communicate and collaborate. You might be using it for information management and producing design information. You might be using it for visualization and optioneering. You might be using clash detection tools or 4D and scheduling tools, or even 5D, so quantification of your design and construction. And design for offsite manufacturers, another thing you could be using it for. So getting your components of your project built offsite. And you might be using BIM and IM to help with asset handover and O&Ms. But obviously, this also produces useful, factual, contemporaneous evidence that's helpful in disputes. So whilst construction technology is really great and quite often can help avoid disputes, it's also really useful when they do happen. And as good as it is, it's not going to resolve all of your disputes. So if you think about insolvencies, supply chain issues, pandemics, war, political instability, geotechnical issues, extreme weather, archaeological discoveries, etc., your construction technology, your clash detection is just not going to resolve everything for you. And there's a really good quote that I always go back to on every dispute. Whenever I'm talking about disputes, this quote is just very, very relevant. It's a party to a dispute will learn 3 lessons, often too late. The importance of records, the importance of records, and the importance of records. It's impossible to exaggerate the extent to which lawyers can find unexpected grounds on which to cast doubt on evidence if it is not backed up with meticulously established records. So I'm going to talk first about models and how they can make great evidence. So if models were used during a project and used during the design and construction stage, you might look at them. So I say I'll be working with a design expert or a delay expert or a quantum expert to look at that design. And we might be asked by lawyers or by judges to consider whether the design was done with reasonable skill and care, or whether it was fit for purpose, or just comment on the design. So what products were used, how detailed was the design, etc. And one of the most common causes of of claims generally is design change and variations, and the delays and costs associated with those changes. So we might be asked to look at how a design changed or how it developed over time. Might also be asked to look at delay analysis. So if changes happened and they caused time impact, then that might be part of what we look at. Clash detection is another component that we may be asked to consider. So we might be looking at historic clash detections, or we might be asked to create our own. 4D, if it's used in the project, or if we're just trying to put together a visualization of what happened and maybe time impact analysis. So if you think about the Society of Construction Law protocol for delay and disruption, we might be looking at those tools and applying it to a visualization. 5D, we might be looking to extract quantities from the model. Point cloud model analysis. If you've got a point cloud, it might be used to look at deviations from design or works that are out of tolerance, or they can be incredibly useful. If you remember during COVID where we couldn't leave the house, they can give you a really great tour of a site and understand the logistics and the site and the design without actually ever having to go to a site visit. They can be very useful. And last but not least, nothing too fancy, just simple drawing overlays. Now, they can be very simple, but very effective. Now, the common pitfalls. What happens that makes this difficult to do or just difficult to sort of plan to do during a project? One of the main issues that keeps coming up on a lot of different disputes is that if models were stored on common data environments, which I'll move on to, they can be difficult to get access to. So if a party hasn't kept their own records, that can be difficult. Or if you're a subcontractor, you're relying on the main contractor, ask them and ensure it's in the contract if possible to send you all of the factual contemporaneous evidence that's relevant to you. So that might be clash detection reports where you were trying to resolve clashes, but maybe other people weren't as proactive, or you just want to document everything. You never know when you're going to need it. So keep your own records and never rely on anyone else for these records. And again, you may need them years down the line. So I've worked on projects where they're looking back at the design, especially post-Grenfell, looking back over 10 years ago. So it can be really difficult if you've got staff turnover to try and find things that no one knows if they exist. So think of it like a trail of breadcrumbs. Think about what someone who's never worked on the project would need to understand how issues unfolded, is the best way that I can describe it. And you may have, I think one of the best analogies I heard recently was about cake ingredients. You may have all the distinct components of the cake, but you really need to bake it for someone. So you may have native files, but make sure you also get the federated files. You may have random clash pictures, but you also need the description of what was going on in those. And if it's an important issue, then you need to raise it on an early warnings register or a delay notice. So think about that trail of breadcrumbs and think about how best someone can follow you back and get out of the woods. And all of this is particularly important around key milestones and events. So that might be at particular design stages, or it may be after variations or at key events. So if you think about that and think about how to put that together, that trail of breadcrumbs at those key events, just make sure that you capture that when something big happens. I've met a lot of people who regret not doing one of these things. So whether it be keeping their own records or thinking about the usability of those records or thinking about doing it at key milestones. So moving on, common data environments, I'm increasingly being told to call them electronic document management systems in other countries. So I've put both here. So common data environments is the solution, is the word that I use, so CDE solutions, but you might call it an electronic document management system. These have obviously changed a lot in our lifetimes. So when I started on a building site over 10 years ago, there were still rooms that looked like the far left image, where disorganized paper-based processes were the norm. And even when they were organized, they weren't that useful. And even when they were digitized, again, it could be cumbersome to look through records. But the CD solutions we have today, many of them have great search functionality. Some of them have OCR scanning, so anything you put in, it will try and read it and come up with search results for particular words. And all of this can be used in eDiscovery if you have access to it. What's stored on these? you might think, it's not just BIM records. So a lot of businesses use these for all types of documentation, and even sometimes correspondence. But obviously, our emails are still a big part of what we do in construction. So the largest that I've ever seen is a common data environment with over 1 million documents on it. And if you're building a brand new motorway or rail network or a new city, then 1 million documents really isn't difficult to get to once you think about all of the things that you need to store on there, all of the project documentation you have. So popular examples are Oracle's Aconex, Bentley's ProjectWise, ACC, Procore, lots of other solutions. So there's many out there. And if you're just wondering what on earth I'm talking about, that's your frame of reference. Now, a common tactic, just moving to pitfalls, sorry, a common tactic is to rescind access to the common data environment. So typically one party controls it, and quite often, even today, even after the case of Triant Engineering v Mott MacDonald, contracts quite often don't deal with what happens in the event of a dispute to the common data environment. And if a party gets terminated, or if both parties are in dispute, the party who controls common data environment may just kick the other side off and wait for some legal repercussion. So if you check your contracts and think about what happens in the event of a dispute, get an insight into what you're entitled to get in the contract, and hopefully in your next contract negotiations, make sure that access is written into there. If you check the ISO 19650 protocol, you'll see a provision for it, I think under clause 5.5. So just to summarize that, access is often rescinded. I've even seen it happen in a case where the parties disputing both lost access when the party who controlled the common data environment went into administration. So it can be wild, and it happens quite often. But a good thing to do if you have common data environment, lots of them allow you to download file logs from them. So many have the functionality to record, say, the dashboard or the outstanding RFIs. And if you again do this at key intervals, maybe on a monthly basis or whatever's useful to you for your trail of breadcrumbs, whether that be the CD log or the reports, they can be incredibly useful down the line. And they may help you look into who was uploading what and when they were uploading, how long it took to get comments back, and really give you insights into what was happening in the project. So just to summarize, your common data environment can help evidence your claim, but only if you have access to it. And the same with your model. All of this only works if you still have access to it. And it's really cumbersome if it's difficult to find and difficult to use. Now, obviously, there's a lot of e-discovery tools out on the market, and these can help sift through data, but lots of them don't work on models, but they do work on things like reports, so clash detection reports. But again, you need to have that trail of breadcrumbs. So if you've got a particular issue, make sure that you call it by a consistent name, maybe by a delay notice or a description of exactly what the issue is, and try and keep it consistent so that once one thread is picked up, you can trace it back. Again, trail of breadcrumbs. And that's my 20 minutes. I'm a little bit under 19 minutes and 20 seconds. So I'm going to thank Justin. And thank you all for watching. Please reach out on LinkedIn if you have any questions.
That's great. Thank you, Sarah. Keep your own records, keep your own records, keep your own records. Okay, George, if you're ready, do you want to turn on your mic and share your screen?
Absolutely, yeah. I think you'll probably see a bit of crossover in the next couple of presentations, or my presentation with Sarah as well. So yeah, hopefully it's all link up nicely. Cool. Yeah, well, lovely to meet you all. Thank you everyone for joining today. I'm from Mail Manager side of things, and my job today is to give you a bit of an overview of what the project's information management sort of globally is looking like today. Let's go on to the next slide. I don't need too much hair, but yes, perfect. So at the moment, the global technology landscape is forever changing at a really high speed, and this is no different with different industries in the AEC. So architects, engineers, construction, we call them the AEC. As I'm sure you've noticed in your own work, technology is continuing to rapidly evolve. I think Sarah touched on there with EDMS systems. The main aim here is making things safer, cheaper, and also quicker as well, and makes everyone's lives easier. Today, there are numerous examples of how new technology is revolutionizing the AEC sector. I mean, for example, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, and of course, BIM. It's no surprise that in this sort of, with everything going on in the world right now, teams working together remotely or a hybrid environment, it's becoming more and more difficult to access that project information at your fingertips. AEC professionals, just like yourselves, rely really strongly on consistent communication that might take the form of pitches, winning clients, or just day-to-day communication with your colleagues. So sadly, those days are gone, or albeit limited, where you can just turn around to the person behind you on the desk next to you and ask your colleague to help find an email, for example. What this means for a lot of people is that they don't have access to the right information when they need it, and they're left out of the communication. And as you can imagine, within the AEC, this is the big problem. With over 350 billion emails expected to be sent and received every day, I think it's this year or next year, emails are the most communicated and collaboration tool across the world. But it's the one thing, and I think Sarah put it grim on this one, it's the one thing that people manage differently, and it's creating huge risk of future or risk of disputes as well. One of these risks, for example, comes with project rework. And in a recent study, it found that 80% of project professionals spend half their time on rework, and poor communication costs around 62 million every year on average. So reworks don't just waste your time and money, but can cause huge communication breakdowns with your team, and of course, those stakeholders and clients during the process. So here at Mail Manager, we run an annual survey called the State of the AEC for Project Management Research Report, which aims to discover how project management collaboration challenges are facing businesses globally within the AEC, so where most of you probably are based. The report explores how firms manage project information, where they store it, and how they go about actually receiving it when it comes to those legal disputes. On top of this, it provides a really valuable insight into how the industry is affected by global changes to the economy, so things like cost of living crisis, supply chain issues, and of course the latest building regulations, like the Building Safety Act. And as you can see on the screen here, this year we surveyed around 550 AEC leaders from businesses, not just in the UK, not just Europe, but all around the world, with a lot of our respondents coming from here in the UK. So yeah, without further ado, let's jump into the findings of the report we did last year. Firstly, majority of the firms we speak to don't have ready and easy access to their information. We found that only about 10% of respondents are not concerned about the accessibility or visibility of their project information. And we tend to see, or most people tend to see this as a big challenge. Secondly, over a quarter of organisations are at risk of problems when staff leave the business. So our research report found that more firms are aware of the importance of finding emails as part of the offboarding process when compared to last year. So in 2022, less than half respondents indicated that employees were actually required to file all project-related emails to a central location. This year, that number has actually risen slightly to just over 50% to 58%, which is of course great to see. But unfortunately, 28% still do not require emails to be filed whatsoever. And with this information, not just emails, information within it is lost. And probably off the back of what Sarah said, disputes are rising year on year. In 2021, 63% of respondents had experienced some form of dispute in their business that year. That number is set to rise in our research report to a disturbing 91%. So project scope changes, payments, things like that continue to be the leading cause of these disputes. Considering a majority of project scope information actually resides in emails and formal documents, it's hardly surprising that firms are continuing to dig themselves into trouble when they don't have an accurate way of having emails readily to hand. And finally, really obvious one here, email is still the most used communication and collaboration tool across the industry. So the purpose of this session today, obviously, we really want to focus on the disputes angle of our research, but we'll be emailing across a copy of the research for the next couple of days as well. So, according to the World Bank, I think you all know what the World Bank are, we are currently in the second year of slowly declining growth. I think they may have changed recently. This is overshadowed by the global recession in 2009, but also 2020. In the AEC we've started to see trends where costs are on the rise, margins are tighter than ever, and there are sadly, large staff cutbacks. Even larger global firms reported huge drop-off in profits as their staff costs are increasing. Unfortunately, more firms are sadly going to administration. With this so much uncertainty, there tends to be many people leaving the business. There's a strong need with this. There's a strong need for businesses to think about what they're doing with that information. What are people doing with their emails, with their documents when they leave the business? How can you be sure that you have access to all those documents or correspondence if they are to leave the business in the future? Considering, as I said earlier, only 28% of the businesses do not have email filing as a part of their offboarding process, and 81% of firms use email as the majority of their project correspondence. Thousands of firms are at great risk of losing this information in the future. Going even more into the stats, so it's even more concerning that finding that 55% of those people we surveyed, they found that they don't have any email management system in place at all, let alone the software, but any sort of process at all. As I'm sure on the webinar, everyone on the webinar today has heard or read the sort of theory that email is dead. At least in our industry, specifically in the AEC, we found these claims to be sort of maybe not the case going into the future. So in 2023, the survey that we did, we found that 88% of the respondents indicated their overall volume of emails had actually increased. So to put that in perspective, this is a really stark increase on the year before, and it sort of adds a bit more light on the importance of filing emails. Only 11 people claim that 11% of people claim they actually file business critical emails. On top of this, 2/3 of the AEC businesses regularly need to retrieve emails as part of their past projects, with only 2% of businesses never having a need to find emails. And over the past year of the research report, we're finding these numbers are remaining relatively consistent. So emails are definitely to stay with us. Unfortunately, we're seeing that project costs are, on top of the dispute, project costs are continuing to spiral, which then leads to disputes within the AEC. So our research report found that only 9% of people actually surveyed had not experienced any dispute at all in the last 12 months. 63% of organisations reported experiencing a dispute in the business in 2021. This rose to 78% in 2022 and now 91% in last year. On top of this, the two causes we tend to find are the reason for disputes are, of course, scope changes, but also chasing payments. I think we've all been in those situations where someone says, we never received that invoice or we never gave that approval. And that's what we're typically finding are the main causes for these disputes. Unfortunately for the industry, these are disputes are starting to gain momentum in the future. The reason why, I think, because probably a majority of information regarding the scope changes is in formal documents and isn't stored anywhere at all. No digital space at all. So it's sort of shocking that 11% of our respondents that we found highlighted that the only place that information is actually kept for the project manager is just very simply in their head. But not a massive amount of 11%, but still some people who don't have any sort of place to store them at all. And in 2020, so pre-COVID, this was actually at 6.2%. So we're seeing that at an alarming increase there for AEC firms not sort of keeping their project scope changes in an organised fashion. With these findings, it's hardly surprising that 90% of businesses are concerned, really, about their project information not being readily accessible. So we're consistently seeing that failing to make emails visible and accessible to project teams can cause issues with legal disputes in the future. So we've lent on a couple of reports for this slide, this show. Arcadis, a big firm globally, they carried out a similar report to us, the Global Construction Disputes Report, and they found out that the average dispute across the world was $52.6 million US, with an average length of 15.4 months. So very simply, a lot of firms can't afford to let information like email correspondence sit through the cracks. So we've seen this theory, this sort of term being coined called the leaky bucket of email management, negatively affecting the AEC firms globally. So firms really must be aware of their corporate history and be able to prove everything. Right? Everyone wants to say they believe in what they said, and it only comes to finding out hard evidence that proves what you said or what you received is actually the case. So given the nature of the industry that you all operate in, firms really need to guarantee that there is information visibility and accessibility to ensure that you all can make the right decisions. And the best cases, poor email management can cost firms money, and of course, in the worst cases, it can actually make people unsafe. So given the size of the global disputes environment at the moment, with the costs mismanaging and the immense but given the sort of the current issues across the AEC at the moment, what we're seeing here is that information locked in people's inboxes. Staff are wasting time looking for that all-important information they need to actually do their job. And of course, I mentioned earlier, staff are leaving the business or even just going on holiday, and the range of their information is then left inaccessible and trapped from the box. So that's sort of been a quick overview of our research report that we carried out last year. We'll send, of course, the research report to all of you out after this call. But what does this mean for information management? How can it sort of help you avoid disputes going forward? So luckily, for us, technology advancements is continuing to improve the way we work. As touched on earlier, AEC firms are increasingly using tech to boost efficiencies. And in BIM, advancements mean that team members can be all on the same pages. The use of BIM has seen several benefits in the global AEC industry, including reducing waste, improved collaboration, enhanced productivity, reduced time being wasted, and overall increased technology adoption. It's improving safety across the industry, and it provides a deep insight to the existing buildings as well. So with the new tech standards like the ISO 19650, it's making our lives easier and really boosting the industry that we have all access to the right amount of information when we need it. So one thing to keep in mind, guys, is that, and I think actually Sarah touched on this as well, the single source of truth that you've got is not fully complete. If it's not fully complete, it's not the source of truth. And in a dispute, most people will learn that the first person who has all the information or has the information readily accessible typically wins that dispute. And what we've seen in our research report is while firms are stringent in how they manage documents and how their contracts are managed, one thing is all managed differently is emails. So with the right tools in place and automation in place, project teams are left their own devices. So some people can sort of manage their own way and they can have the automation to do the filing of the emails for them. And there's less of a reliance on the information being managed stringently. What this also is going to do is provide a much better way of working, encourages more transparent communication, and ensures all team members have access to that single source of the tongue twist that one, that single source of truth. Plus, it removes the responsibility of storing and managing data from one person or a department. So there's less reliance on you as an individual, but actually there's a stringent process in place that everyone is upholding and more consistency. So it's time to avoid these sort of common headaches that we'll see on the screen here. I think everyone's been in an office where they've heard someone shout across the email saying, this wasn't agreed, or when did you last tell us this, or Can you actually formulate information to prove it's been said? Those excuses, with technology, we'll see, are going to be gone. So some of the benefits really from a centralized sort of platform for email, for information, include really your data becoming more discoverable, which then eliminate the human error through automated workflows, establishing that version control, reducing the amount of time being wasted on searching and recreating lost documents, which is crucial really when you're looking to improve your billable hours and your contract hours you can take on. We want to increase that transparency and, of course, traceability as well, so know who said it and why it was said, but also complying with those new regulatory and legal requirements that are in place by you and your business or the overall industry itself. And that's where we come in today with Mail Manager. So we were created. So I guess why am I talking to you today? So I'm sure everyone has heard of the company Arup Engineering. So Arup Engineering, for those who haven't heard of them, big project-based engineering practice. They cover their projects on the screen here today. But the reason why I bring them up is because they actually created the system I'm talking to you today about. So they created Mail Manager themselves in-house. Very simply, like any project-based firm, they knew the importance of being able to track information. They knew the importance of to find information at their fingertips. So what they tried to do is get people to manually drag and drop into an EDMS system or a project management system. But what they found is very simply, no one was doing it. It became overly manual. Emails being left in people's inboxes, locked away, difficult to find, all those common headaches there. And what they were finding is even if they were following that process, it was just really time consuming. So what they did, and this is one of the best things that I personally love about it, is they went back in house, tried to find something they could just buy off the shelf. They wanted a really easy system to implement, something that was easy to set up and easy to use. Funny enough, couldn't find that. So they went completely the other end of the spectrum and developed the system themselves. And you get the sense of when you start to see the system, when you use it, that it's been designed for project teams by a project team. So we really know the issues that people have and how to really importantly solve them as well. So what I want to do is show you a couple of our key case studies here across the globe of who are using Mail Manager. And I think you'll probably see a lot of these names on the screen here are pretty well-known names to you all. I just want to focus on these three in particular. So Genza, for example, they are big architecture practice. But what they found is when working with us, they were saving about 5 weeks per person, 5 hours, per person per week on the administrating tasks surrounding filing. So file coding, filing emails to the folders, making sure it's labeled properly, searching for it. And it was finding out they were saving 5 hours per person. And what this meant is that they could very simply take on more billable hours and reduce the amount of admin hours that they were wasting in the business. Rambo, another really good customer of ours, they found they were saving about 3 hours per user per week on sort of email management with their projects. And then finally, WSP, they had a really good use case where over the last 10 years, they had a couple of disputes and found that the system really simply paid itself back because it meant they could find emails not just quickly and efficiently without wasting project time, but it also meant they could actually find it in the first place. They'd had times previously where they couldn't actually find an email whatsoever, and it was costing them money. So what does this system actually do? What are we trying to solve here? And these are the typical issues that come up when we speak to people about Mail Manager. So there is usually a risk of losing sensitive information. And what I mean by that is the information is somewhere on the system, somewhere on the system. You know, IT can find it, but it's a case of will we actually be able to find it quickly and efficiently? There's a risk of that information being locked away in people's inboxes, sensitive project information becoming inaccessible. The analogy I always give is the keys are in your house. You don't know where, but they're somewhere in the house, and there's a risk of you've lost them. And then we go on to sort of the really obvious one is efficiency. People just waste a lot of time with their emails. It's one of those things, those things that people don't want to sit there for hours on end, especially within the AEC. You're all very busy people. You're there to do really exciting things like design bridges and do CAD modeling and things like that. What you don't want to be doing is sitting down 2 hours a week and filing your emails. And that's exactly what we find is that people are wasting time doing that. And it's then having a knock-on effect to the wider business itself. Lack of control, really obvious one there, but often understated is a lot of businesses we speak to, they put in place a process, no one's doing it. And there's a lack of control, or there's a bit of a disconnect of what management are putting in place with what people are actually doing. And that there is then creating, all collectively, the information that are locked in people's inboxes, inaccessible to find and can't find it. So what are we actually going to do then? I'll get on to the demonstration in a second and give you a bit of an overview. We want to make sure that emails are really accessible. You can find any email within 2 or 3 clicks, whether you were involved in it or not. Reduce the amount of admin hours you're wasting on these projects, but also give you the visibility across the job. You know, let's say there's 5 of you working on a project, or even 50. We want to make sure that everyone is, very simply singing off the same hymn sheet. We want to make sure everyone's going off the same information and knows what's been said, so that we can find out what's been said and what's been agreed at any given moment. Perfect. Well, let me get on to the demonstration and share my other screen. So, there it is. Perfect. So hopefully what you can all see here is my inbox. What you'll probably see here is that my inbox won't look too drastically similar from anybody else's. Mail Manager's very simply an Outlook plugin, which makes it great for the AEC. It's simple to use, but also very easy to implement. It's not going to take anyone's time up, really. It can be set up in about an hour and a half. The main aim of the system, as I was saying on that last slide, we want to provide visibility. The way we do that is we're going to file emails out of your inboxes, a copy of them, directly into the project folder system that you host yourselves. We're not going to store it on our platform. We're going to file it into your systems that you've got, which is great, keeps it all in your environment, and we don't sort of hold it hostage or anything like that. What you then got here is a really detailed search tool to actually rely on when it comes to trying to find an email in the future. So how do we file away these emails? So I'll take an email here from Zach. Let's say I'm very simply a project manager. I'm going to say there is a delay with the planning. Please update. Right. So quite an important email here that if you're working in construction, you need to be able to rely back on this and find out where the delays, where snaggings have happened. But if you're working within architecture, for example, you need to find out what's been agreed at certain stages. Now, at the moment, what we're finding with most of the AEC is they're sending these emails out and they're just leaving it in their inbox. That's great for you. You can find that email yourself, but no one else can find it. There's no visibility. So with Mail Manager, as soon as anybody clicks send to an email, what you're greeted straight away here is with a prompt. Now, simply, this prompt is going to give you the consistency across the company. Make sure everyone's filing and following that sort of that habit of saving information. What it's also going to do is pre-select a project folder for you based on keywords, project names, your past filing habits, a couple of things like that. So all you've got to do as a user is agree to it. There's no time being wasted having to select a folder here. You check it's going to the right one, click send and file. That then sends the email out and the files away both sent and received copies directly into the project folder. What I can then also do is file incoming emails with right click and file. I've got selected locations here. And we've also got the option that when you open up the email and then you read it and you close that down, it will then, of course, prompt you to file it away there as well. What you get on the emails written filed away is a nice clear orange tag, tells you it's been saved, you haven't got to worry about it anymore. And what we're getting here really is not just a case of people are filing emails at the end of a project and there's no visibility throughout. We're getting that situation where all of your information is being filed into that single source of truth throughout your job. So everyone knows what they're saying. Someone goes on holiday, we know what's been said. When it comes to trying to find this information, every user has here an access to a search tool that allows them to open it up and have visibility across the whole system. Just open that on my other screen very helpfully. Give me 1 second. So this opens up this. No, this opens up this. That button opens up this search tool here, which very simply gives you that visibility, gives you that single source of truth to rely on when it comes to trying to find an email, either in dispute or just when someone leaves the business. To give you an example of how teams really use this tool, let's say we had a situation about 5 years ago. My colleague Georgina, she sent an email to one of our clients, Gensler, and since then she left the business. So we had to pick up where she left off. What we usually find is trying to find a 5-year-old email that someone had sent and left the business typically rings alarm bells. With Mail Manager, we can type in something here like invoice, that then will bring up all of the emails that says that word in it. So it won't just search the subject line, but it's also going to search the contents of the email as well for that word. We know the reason why we do this is we know that not all emails are labeled properly. We want to search for content as well. I'll give you an example here. There's an email over invoice being highlighted several times. I'm going to go into the Gensler project folder. I'm going to say yes to attachments being on the email. 30 emails there, quite a few to look through. But what I want to do is narrow down even further, type in someone's name, type in Georgina's name. She was included on the email, and that now is the whole chain of correspondence. What's been said, who said it, why it was said. We've got a sort of single place where we're all reading off the same information for a project, but also you can press this button here and actually open it up from your storage environment and give it to you in a format where you can actually reply to it as well. So really good ability here to actually not just find the information, find out what's been said, but actually jump into conversations when someone's left the business. There's no case when you forward it on or trying to find someone's inbox. We've got that place here that really becomes the search tool, not just for your inbox, but for everyone's inbox altogether. I appreciate this has been a bit of a whistle-stop tour, guys. That's it from me. If you've got any questions at all, then let me know. I'm sure we're going to do a Q&A in a second. But if this does become a system that becomes really relevant to you and you thought that guy today is speaking some sense, then get in touch with us. We run free trials, more in-depth demonstrations, so we can go into more detail. But yeah, I'll hand back over to you, Justin.
Brilliant. Thanks, George. Sarah, if you can turn your mic and camera back on, which you have. Brilliant. Okay, let's crack on. I'm just going to hit one button. No, I don't have to hit the one. That's fine. Okay, so Sarah, should we ban the use of instant messaging services among staff or anything to do with projects? Let's start with an easy one.
Oh, what a good question. I'd say it's difficult to do so for starters. So the first part of this is if you're out in the field, if you're on a big oil and gas site, sometimes you don't get Wi-Fi everywhere. Imagine, an oil field in the middle of Saudi Arabia. It's essential to have things like WhatsApp in those situations and do those sign-offs, take those pictures. But to make it useful, factual, contemporaneous, digitized evidence that you can come back to later. So your key isn't just in the house somewhere. It's important to back those up onto the cloud and make sure that an e-discovery system could pick them up later. So yeah, don't ban it, but just regulate it, do it sensibly. And of course, if you had it backed up to your emails, then I don't want to speak for George, but if you had those backed up to your emails, George, what do you think would happen? I think you might be able to find them later. Nods.
So another one, there are some project-related messages that I've sent from my personal phone, not a company phone. Am I bound to reveal those in the event of a dispute?
I'd say first, that's outside my area of expertise, but definitely contact a lawyer. And all I do know about that is it would depend on your jurisdiction, your area, and if this was criminal as opposed to civil. So you said yes, light it on fire. That would be very different. But again, ask your lawyer, your company's lawyer, and yeah, that's not one for me, unfortunately.
That's right. Okay, this might be outside of it then. Is there any way of requiring a former employee to share records, notes, messages relating to a dispute made on their personal equipment while they were with us?
I think it's difficult to do from experience, so you can't compel anyone to give you records. And this is why it's incredibly difficult when what we call a witness of fact is left. And this is very common when your business is in financial distress. So if someone hasn't had a pay rise, they're likely to leave, if they're not getting what they want out of your business. And then, of course, the trail of breadcrumbs goes with them. So your witness of fact may disappear, so does their record. So keep them while you can. Unfortunately, I've seen lots of businesses who have to pay their witnesses of fact to make the time. And sometimes it's just they want to, but they work somewhere else in a different time zone. Sometimes it's difficult to do.
Yeah. Okay. Alrighty. Some questions for George. How do you, not you personally, George, but how does Mail Manager file emails? Is it the subject title that's important?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, the short answer is no. We know that a lot of emails that come in, from clients, contractors, subcontractors are labeled absolutely anything. It could start off by labeled "What do you want for lunch?" and actually change the conversation about RSJs, for example. We know they're labeled anything. So what we do with the prompt is we take into consideration not just what emails are labeled, but also your past filing habits. So where you as a user typically like to file emails to from that particular email address, for example. So if you're always receiving emails to and from that client and filing it to Project A, most of the time the prompt is going to tell you to file that email to Project A, even if it's labeled "What do you want for lunch," for example.
Yeah. Putting two questions together: what happens with sensitive emails, and what happens with duplicate emails?
Yeah, good. So with sensitive emails, nice and simply, we go off the permissions that are in place in your filing environment. So let's say you're a construction firm working with the MOD for a military site. Obviously, restricted project, only who's working on that has access to it. We go off the permissions that are in place on your storage environment. So let's say you've got a DMS that restricts access to certain project folders. With that search tool, you're not going to be able to find emails if you don't have access to it. And then with the duplication, we don't duplicate any emails whatsoever. We've got a couple of nifty ways of doing that, but it means that if you've got 10 people file the same email, we're only going to save one. Makes searching for it a heck of a lot easier, but also obviously reduce the space you take up as well.
Yep. Okay. With Mail Manager, does it work only on live emails? Can historic emails be fed into it?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you've got emails in your DMS system, we can index those. We can provide those into the search. If you've got emails that are all within your Outlook and you want to put them into the Mail Manager search, we've got a number of tools that we can help do that. We're not sadly a bulk filing tool, but we can make your life a heck of a lot easier when it comes to doing that. So we've got a number of different ways to do that, a couple of automated ideas, or just a bulk selecting, a bulk filing tool as well.
And perhaps relating to the idea of keeping records, what happens if you file the email in a wrong folder?
Yeah, it's always an alarming prospect, especially when if you file a contracts email into a project folder that people shouldn't have access to, for example. So we've got either on the search tool, you can select an email, and as long as you've got permission to do so, you can select an email and move it to a different folder or delete it. But also with Mail Manager in your dashboard, it will give you a rundown of all the emails you filed, and you can select the ones you want to move or not be filed.
Okay, all right. Sarah, there was now where was that question which I've now just lost? What's the best contract form for making the most of the collaboration that information best practice can engender, and/or can we invert that question in some way? Are there some contract forms which are perhaps more likely to foster disputes?
That's a great
an environment that might engender disputes.
Yeah, absolutely. The more and more I work in the dispute sector, the more I see it's quite often not about the contract. Now, there are contracts where they engender proactive and collaborative working practices. However, it's all about behaviors. So I've seen contracts that are barely a page long that parties have done a good job to keep their records. So it's all about behaviors at the end of the day. Now, you can be very prescriptive about the records you want to keep in your contract, and that might be a good idea, but it's ultimately about the people on the project. It doesn't, it's in your best interest to keep your records. So don't leave it to your contract to tell you to keep records.
Yeah, okay. George, let's get more and more questions coming in. Let's pull some out.
Well, Justin finds a question. So my firm is just starting to use Mail Manager. So we're just at the start of our journey, and I'm really looking forward to actually being able to just organize things a bit more intelligently. So we have all this technology to help us with every other area, and emails has really been left behind. And it is such an important part of our working practices. You know, you can get things that turn out to be variations to your contract in an email if a party has the capacity to make those changes and give permissions, etc. So I'm looking forward to that.
George, what happens if lots of people are filing the same email to a project folder?
Yeah, so probably comes back to that duplication question. So you can get as many emails filed away as you want into a project folder, and let's say it's the same email and it's duplicated lots of times, we'll deduplicate it. But also, if you've got lots of people filing to the project folder, that's exactly what Mail Manager is designed for, is that visibility. So if you've got lots of emails in there, the best way we describe it is the more information you've got there, the bigger the picture you're going to have. So we wouldn't suggest necessarily having Mail Manager for half the people on the project. You realistically need to have it for everyone on the project, because there's no point in searching for half their emails when there's another half that are inaccessible. So yeah, most people, more people filing to Mail Manager, the better, because you've got the best picture.
Okay. Kind of then possibly coming off the back of that one of the questions down the bottom, can email management be project specific, purpose built for the organization, or tailored for projects to meet certain peculiarities? Can't even say that word myself.
I think that's probably a question surrounding, and let me know if that question, if I've got this wrong, but it sounds like it's a question surrounding, can we get Mail Manager for just a project, let alone a company, just a project? And you absolutely can. We're working with a number of companies who are working on HS2, for example, and they're sort of sites that they're working on. They're not using it for the whole company. They just signed up for it for the next 3-5 years, or whatever, how long the project life cycle is. And it's a really good opportunity if, let's say, the client is mandated that you have to ensure your emails are stored centrally. Then we're a good product to make sure. We're the easy option as well. So when companies ask you to do this, or you're legally required to do this, we're a really good, easy option to get it implemented quickly and see the benefits straight away. We'll tick that box and get it sorted.
Yeah. Okay. Ragesh asks the big question: what is the best solution to avoid disputes in the construction industry? Any thoughts on that, Sarah?
Oh God, that is quite the question.
Apart from the fact it would do you out of a job if there weren't any, but you know.
Well, I think every expert witness that I've ever worked with, I think I'd say 99.9% of them would rather be working in advisory roles, but that's quite often not what people want to hear. So as an industry, we still chuck risk off to people best managed to handle it. We don't finish our designs, we're just keen to progress. And I think there are a lot of systematic issues with the industry. And I think we're seeing it again in the media, these really small profit margins that any other industry would be, slightly shocked to work to. So in terms of best solutions, I can't really give a single answer. All I can say is just make sure you protect yourself, make sure you protect your business, and keep those records, and make sure you have the tools to find everything you need on a rainy day, and act as if that rainy day is going to come, not that it's a potential might happen. Just act as if it will, and then you'll have everything you want and you won't be regretting anything.
When you're digging into a dispute, do you find that that some staff among the clients don't quite realise how important the record keeping is, and how something they said on WhatsApp or whatever could be quote unquote used against them? Do enough people within a company working on a project realise everything they do can fall within the legalese of the contract?
Speaking from experience, I think this is my first adjudication and my first experience of dispute resolution. My brother's has his own construction firm, and when I was younger, when I just left university, you forget that actually, you don't know how important, say, a clash might be at the time, and it's only when you start reading the contract and understanding that actually, if this isn't easy to resolve, if it goes back to other parties, if you need approvals, etc., the design's fundamentally wrong. You need to escalate that and have a proactive conversation. So going back to the question, it's not a simple answer, but it's just something that comes with time. That you need to just understand the contract, and George might have a better answer for that.
Yeah, I think in those situations where the best system, I was taking on what you were saying there, Sarah, in terms of making sure you've got access to information, making sure that you keep yourself protected. I'd love to hear it sit here and say mail manager system to do that. And mail manager is a small part. Emails are often forgotten, and mail manager will do that. But there's lots of information out there that needs to be protected, and it's just crucial you've got a document management system that's kept up to date, and you've got all the information that you need to have. And typically, if you find that you go in there and you ever find there's not the information you need in there, then there's probably a bigger issue there of there's more information in there that you're not. There's more situations that you don't know about where the information hasn't been filed there. So just make sure that it's an easy way for people to save it, easy way for people to save information without having to have the hassle of manually doing it.
Okay, all right. A technical question from Tamsin. Your demo was with Outlook. Does the product work with Google Workspace?
Sadly not. We've looked at doing with Google Workspace in the past. We just had issues with the way it's set up, the way Google Workspace is set up. It's not very friendly for admins, sadly.
Interoperability, an ongoing issue. And Sarah, again, maybe too big a question. What is the best dispute resolution method used in the construction industry?
Oh gosh, I don't think there's a single answer. I think different projects, different businesses have different needs, obviously. So in the UK, we have statutory adjudication. That could be helpful if you need a quick answer. Cash is king. Cash flow is very important, obviously. There's no single. I could tell you it's arbitration, litigation, adjudication, etc. But there's no. It's a very specific need for your business and your project, essentially. So for some businesses, dispute adjudication boards can help, but others you'd need to go to mediation, or depending on the jurisdiction, maybe it's not going to work for you. So yeah, there's no one size fits all there.
Yeah. Okay. Some final quick questions for George. Is Mail Manager only available to big construction companies, or can SMEs also make use of it? And is the tool readily available online, or do you have to pay for its subscription?
So it's a subscription-based model. So but most of our companies we work with are SME-based firms. So absolutely relevant to the smaller firms out there. I think what we often find is the smaller firms are doing lots of different jobs in their company, and email management, they haven't got time to do it. So that's where it typically comes in really relevant if it takes that sort of piece off the plate and give it to us to sort out.
And what other tools, or does Mail Manager can it sync with data and information from other collaborative working tools?
Yeah, I put one together in a bit more detail in terms of what that question is, but we can sync and work with other tools like ProjectWise, Aconex, SharePoint, Viewpoint, Procore, a lot of big construction-based systems out there that we can work with, and we can file into and search the emails within it.
And quick final one, Sarah, which may not be quick. Is there any formal principle to follow in settling disputes on a project?
No, but again, records, and yeah, everything that George has said as well. So I think the only thing we really haven't said is just how important it is when you have a conversation to follow it up with an email, George.
I was about to say that, yeah.
And especially for SMEs. So just so you're not, so you have that trail of breadcrumbs. And if anything, I think SMEs are going to benefit from this as much as main contractors and clients, because you just don't have time to search for records inefficiently.
Okay, alrighty. Conscious of the time, I will share my screen and put up the final slide as we move to the conclusion. So indeed, wrapping up the webinar, this webinar has been recorded and will be available to watch on demand via the original registration page from a little later today. You can share it with peers and colleagues or simply watch it again yourselves. For more on IM for Legal, go to wearenema.im, or you could try following Sarah on LinkedIn if you wanted to. For more on IdeaGen Mail Manager, go to mailmanager.com. For more on the Digital Construction Summit, go to digitalconstructionsummit.co.uk. Simply remains for me to say thank you to IdeaGen Mail Manager for supporting this webinar, and thank you very much to Sarah and George for their time and input this morning. And thank you, the audience, for tuning in. Good afternoon.